Hi folks, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Omaruddin and you may already know me for some of my expertise in the area of Arabic calligraphy. I've been teaching this art for the last 7 years. I have 2 very successful online courses that teach you different aspects of the art in great detail. I also have 2 published books that teach you the art in the English language. I'm also very humble to say that I've designed calligraphic artwork for some of the most beautiful masajids in North America, from mihrabs to domes to beautiful and mesmerizing wall art. Doing this has been a great honor and I can't be more happy to be a part of this. Now, over the years, I have come across a lot of artists who are basically hobbyists and would like to pursue something like this for a living. Make a career out of doing something that you really enjoy doing. That's something that I did. And so in this quick video tutorial, I'd like to give you a 5-step process that can help you become a freelancer artist for yourself. Hi folks, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. In this video tutorial, I'll take you into the world of freelancing. Now, I've been in the business long enough to see some people really succeed at freelancing their artwork, but at the same time, I've also seen people who just couldn't get on their feet. In fact, I myself was one of them. And many of the things that I'll be teaching in this lesson are things that I've learned the hard way, the practical way. And so my intention here is to warn you of those obstacles so that you can avoid them altogether and get on your feet as quickly as possible. So why freelance? What are some of the benefits of being a freelance artist? So one of the biggest one is the fact that you don't really need a website to be a freelancer. In fact, I've seen a lot of people become really successful through their Instagram page, through their Pinterest page, through their Facebook pages, and that's really all you need to get yourself up and running. Now, you can also utilize platforms like Upwork.com where you can register yourself as a freelance artist and work on things like wedding designs and such. So you definitely don't need a website to become a freelance artist. Another great advantage of freelancing is that there is minimal investment required to get yourself off and running. All you really need is a vector editing software like Adobe Illustrator and you're off to the races. Now, as time goes by, you can start investing into things like a vinyl cutter, so maybe you can design wall decals and things like that, but it's not something that you absolutely need to be a freelance artist. Really, all you need, as I mentioned, is Adobe Illustrator so you can begin designing artwork for people and sending it off to them. Another great advantage of freelancing is that you get to grow your portfolio while earning money. Now, a lot of beginner artists say that I don't have much of a portfolio. Who's going to hire me? Who's going to ask me to design their logo for them? So to that, I would recommend that if you're an absolute beginner and just starting out, do put together a few mock designs. They're not going to take you very long to make and use those designs in your starting portfolio. And eventually, as you begin to get projects from different clients and you complete them, you can take those pieces of artwork and include it as part of your portfolio. Last but not least, a great advantage of freelancing is that you can take the artwork that you've designed for others and repurpose that for your own work. Now, I'm not saying take somebody's wedding logo or somebody's company logo that you've designed and make a wall decal out of it. No, I'm definitely not saying that. But if you've written and designed a specific verse or a chapter from the Quran, then you can definitely take those designs and repurpose them to create a marketable product. Now, if you're concerned that there may be some copyright issues and the owner of the artwork may want to use that artwork for their own purpose, which I can completely understand if they're asking to design a wedding logo or a company logo, but really to copyright something like a verse from the Quran isn't something that's likely going to happen. But to make sure that you cover yourself, you can include a clause in the contract that you'll be signing with the client, which explicitly states that you own the design. Now, if there is an issue with a particular client, then you can let that design go. But in my personal experience, I found that most clients don't really have an issue with this. So now that we've discussed some of the benefits, let's take you through the 5-step process, which will essentially help you become a freelance artist for yourself. So the first step is to select a niche. This is so very important, and I've seen way too many beginners get burnt on this. What happens is that in order to make a living, we make ourselves open to designing any and everything out there. And that's really the wrong approach to take. Not only are you going to get burnt out really fast, but you're actually hampering yourself from building any sort of an image. Remember that with time, you want to get bigger and better projects in the same realm that you've been working on. So what are some of the niches that we can focus on? Wedding logos, wedding canvases, company logos, Islamic calligraphy for mosques, Islamic calligraphy for homes, tattoo designs, wall decals, large format masterpieces, mihrabs, domes, and many, many more. So select a niche that interests you and run with it. Okay, over to step 2, set a floor and ceiling. Now let me explain what that means. A floor is essentially the minimum value of a project that you are willing to take on. If you're just starting out, then you may not even have a floor. You may say that I can take projects that even pay me $5 or $10. That's really up to you. This is something that you need to decide. So if you're an experienced calligrapher and you've decided that you're not going to take any projects that don't pay you at least $500, then that's your floor, because anything less is just not worth your time. For example, for myself, I don't design anything that is under the value of $2,000. And that's not because, God forbid, I look down on any of these projects. It's just that over time, I've moved on to bigger and better things. At this point in my life, I just enjoy making large format masterpieces that go in mosques and that are seen by a large number of people. Having said that, I started off right from the beginning. I remember myself making $5 and $10 logos, which, by the way, I don't advise you do because that's way too cheap and your time is worth a lot more. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you have to start off right from the basics and make your way up. So my suggestion is that if you're just starting out, you set your floor a little low, maybe $40 or $50, and don't take any projects underneath that. And I don't suggest that you take anything less than that because it's just not worth your time. You are going to be a world-class artist one day. And as time goes by and you work on more projects and you expand your portfolio, you're naturally going to move on to bigger and better things. So there's no reason to force this whole process. Now, in addition to setting a floor, you also need to set a ceiling. What's the maximum value of a project that you can take on? Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Why should I set a ceiling? Isn't that really limiting my own potential? And that's a great question. And the answer is that it is not about limiting your potential. It's really about the capability and the capacity that you have at this point in time. What is it that you can physically accomplish with the given resources that you have at this point in time? So if it's hard to understand this concept, let me give you a little example. So if tomorrow morning you wake up and you get a call from the Saudi government, and by the way, this is completely hypothetical, but say you got the call and they ask you to design and manufacture artwork for a new expansion that they're putting out outside of Masjid al-Nabawi, and they would like you to take care of that. And they need it done within 2 weeks. So this is a hypothetical situation. Are you able to take care of such a job? Now, obviously you're not, and a lot of people aren't, and I myself can't fathom of doing something like that, even at this point in my career. So is that over my ceiling? Definitely. Because I just don't have the capability or the capacity or the resources in order to complete a job like this at the moment, let alone in the next 2 weeks. Now, am I saying that I can't do that in the future? Definitely not. In fact, it would be a dream for me to work on a project like this. However, given my current capacity, this is just not physically possible. So set a ceiling for yourself. What's the highest value project that you're able to work on at this point in time? And once you have both your floor and your ceiling, along with selecting a niche, you're going to have a lot more clarity going forward. Step 3, determine your pricing. Now, this is a big one. And unfortunately, I've seen way too many newbie calligraphers coming into the business and not pricing their work appropriately, or worse, undercharging for their great services. So I'm going to go through 2 examples in hopes that I can help you price your own services a little bit better. Now, the first example here is quite simple. We're just working with a custom wedding logo. So somebody calls you up tomorrow and says, hey, can you design a wedding logo for me? How much are you going to charge me? Now, the first step of the process here is to determine an hourly rate for yourself. Now, this is something that is completely personal, but if you're just starting out, I would suggest that you charge anywhere between $50 to $150 an hour, nothing less than that. Believe me, you're going to be undercharging for your services otherwise. Now, the second step here is to estimate the number of hours that it will take you to complete this project. And once you have that number, you're going to take your hourly rate and you're going to multiply it by the number of hours that you anticipate to take for this project. And that will give you the price that you're going to quote to your client. Okay, really simple, really straightforward. This is the ideal way to provide a quote for something as simple as a custom wedding logo. So in example 2, we'll be looking at something just slightly more complicated. So imagine yourself getting a call to design a custom mihrab for a local mosque. How would you go ahead and provide a quote to that client? So this is actually a real life example of a mihrab that I designed. Now again, the first step here would be to determine your hourly rate. Now if you're a calligrapher who has been in the business for a long time and are somebody who is renowned, then I don't suggest that you charge anything less than $200 an hour, because that's just how much your time is worth. Now, the second step here would be to estimate the number of hours that it will take for completion. Now, it's important to take into account here every aspect of the design as well as the construction phase of this project. Determine how long it's going to take you to design the work. Determine how long it's going to take you to manufacture the artwork. Now, if you don't have the manufacturing capacity, how much time is it going to take a vendor to manufacture this for you? And what's the amount of time that's going to take you to go back and forth and discuss the design with the manufacturer? Also, how much time is it going to take to go back and forth between you and the client? It's important to take all of these items into account and then put out a total number of estimated hours. So in this case, I estimated that it would take me a whole week of full-time work to design, manufacture, and install this mihrab. And so that's what I put down here, 37 hours. So the third step here would be to determine your material costs. Now in the previous example, we were designing a custom logo, which was going to be a digital file. And so there really isn't any physical material costs to that. But when you are putting something physical together, like a mihrab, then obviously there are going to be material costs and you need to account for those. Now these material costs also include any costs that vendors forward off to you. Now, for this project, I was the designer and I had a third-party vendor take care of the whole manufacturing process through a CNC machine. And so this cost of $9,950 was something that was passed down over to me. And basically, I took this and I added it to my overall costs. And so for this project, the total cost that I quoted to my client was $17,350. Now, $7,400 of that, which is basically 200 times 37 hours, that is what I got to take home with me. The remaining $9,950 was basically the cost of the third-party vendor who was manufacturing the entire design and was basically installing it for me. So, all the steps until this point in time were to help you get clarity before you begin any work. Selecting a niche, setting your floor and ceiling, and determine a pricing methodology to quote your client. Now, step 4 basically occurs during your first interaction with your client. Make sure you get as much details from your client as possible in regards to their preferences, their vision of the final design, and any other specifications in related to the script that they want to use, and so on and so forth. This is not only helpful as it'll save you a lot of time not second guessing what the client wants, but will also get your client to think about the details of the design themselves, which they're probably going to be doing for the first time. Now, the funny but unfortunate fact is that most clients don't actually take this seriously until they receive the first draft of the design from the freelancer. And in the worst case scenario, they'll ask you to totally turn the whole design around and essentially start from scratch, unless of course you do this step. Ironing out the details in advance will save both sides a lot of time and hassle. I can't tell you how many times I've been burned in my early days, spending weeks working on a design only to find out that they wanted something totally different. For example, years ago when I was first getting started, I had a client who wanted me to design a company logo for her. So I asked her what her preferences were in regards to how she wants it to look. And to that she replied that, Omar, you know what, I've seen your work and I really like it and I completely trust your judgment. All that did was boost my ego. I began working right away on the design. When I turned it back around, she didn't seem too impressed. She said that the script wasn't what she had in mind. Also, the size and orientation of the text was not what she had expected. All in all, the design went back and forth 7 times before an agreement was finally made. And all this commotion for a project that I had quoted $75 for. Definitely not the best use of my time and also her time, let alone the frustration all along the way. Now, if by any chance you are listening to this, you know who you are, let me tell you, it was my mistake. I should have done a better job investigating exactly what she wanted before we got started. So essentially, all of this could have been taken care of if I had done step 4. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the perfect segue into the last step. Step 5, get a written agreement in place and signed by both parties. Now, this could be as simple or as complicated as you'd like it to be, depending on the complexity and the value of the project. Having said that, there are a number of items I would highly suggest you include in the agreement, and they are as follows. So first, your quoted price. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. Second item, how many reviews are included with the price? In my opinion, the client does have the right to request at least one minor review on what you have submitted as part of the initial cost. As long as the review isn't asking you to totally turn the whole design upside down, I think it's quite fair. However, if this process requires any more reviews, it either means that you didn't take care of step 4 properly, or the client themselves keep changing their mind. And believe me, this happens more often than you'd think. In either case, that shouldn't be acceptable. And so there should be a fee for each review after your first free review to them. The next step is to include the details of the design, basically what we did in step 4. Now, it's so important to actually write these down on the agreement because you don't want to be in a you said this or I said that situation. Everything should be in writing. The next thing to include is the value of an agreed upon deposit. Now, taking a deposit is completely optional, but boy, do I highly recommend this. Now, most clients you'll come across will be legitimate and sincere folks who will be willing to pay you for your services. But believe me, there are those folks that would just change their mind and scrap the project, especially after you've put in your initial work. Taking a deposit essentially means that they'll have some sort of teeth in the game, and it shows their commitment to have this completed through you. Now, in my opinion, this should also be a completely non-refundable deposit, even if the client doesn't take the final design for whatever reason. It still means that you did your hard work putting this whole thing together, and you should get paid for your work. Last but not least, you should state the approximate timeline it'll take to finish the project. Now, you should already have this information because remember, you provided a quote to the client, and within that quote, you included the labor cost, which was number of hours spent times the hourly rate. Then based on that, you can document an approximate timeline on the agreement. Now, in a situation where the project is taking exceptionally long, longer than expected for whatever reason, you can agree with the client to change the contract. But having said that, an initial forecast should always be included. Now, for your convenience, I've put together a generic template that you can use for your own freelancing business going forward. I used this template myself when I was doing projects between $100 and $1,000 value. Now that my projects are a little bit bigger, I have a more thorough version of the contract in place. But if you're just getting started, I don't think you should require anything more than what I'm sharing over here. So click on the link below to grab your own copy. And with that, the 5-step freelancing process comes to an end. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and found some piece of value to take away from it. Until next time, take care and assalamu alaikum.